Cinematic VR Crash Course.
Okay, today's the big day. We're gonna talk you through your first ever cinematic VR shoot. There is a method to the madness, so let me guide you through these steps. Always start with preparing your gear the day before. So here are 8 simple steps that will ensure you of a ready-to-shoot camera. 1. Numbering your hardware. Attach labels to your hardware with numbers and names, just in case you lose something. 2. Configuring the software. Check if your software is working properly and adjust where needed. 3. In case of a multicam setup, rename your cams. It's really helpful to rename the cameras internally, so that you can see what footage came from what camera. 4. Format the SD cards. Always format the cards while in the camera or using the camera's software. 5. Configuring your camera. Think ahead and already configure the camera to your shoot's requirements. 6. Pair camera to software. Use the cables or Wi-Fi. 7. Charge. 8. Pack your gear and double check. So, even though you prepared your gear the day before, it's a good idea to start your shoot with a little test run to catch potential hiccups early on. But first, we'll have to set up our rig. Place your camera rig on top of your tripod. Make sure it is level and positioned at eye height. If you place it lower, people watching your content will feel very small, so unless that's your goal, try to avoid this. Attach your ambisonic microphone to the tripod and connect it to the audio recorder. Make sure that the numbers on the XLR cables match the numbers on the input ports of the audio recorder, and that all 4 channels have identical volume settings. Press record and clap your hands a couple of times. Are all 4 channels recording and not clipping? Great! On to the next step then. Camera batteries run out very quickly, so plug in the cables and you'll never have to worry about running out of power again. Powering your camera in this way does increase the chance of overheating. Keep your camera cool. GoPros can be outfitted with heat sinks, others by turning them off in between shoots or use a good old fan to cool it down. We even use compressed air ones. With most 360 cameras comes an app for your smartphone or computer, so you can control it and check the status of the batteries and temperature. Beside this option, many cameras have physical buttons, so you can use it standalone. With the GoPro rig, this is a bit more difficult. Use a smart remote to control all the cameras simultaneously. Let's configure the camera. Lighting will obviously affect your image. You can adjust the settings of your camera in order to get the desired output, but sometimes cameras are limited by their capabilities. It's not common for 360 cameras to have the possibility of adjusting the aperture. Most of the time, you'll only have shutter speed, ISO, and frames per second to work with. Let's start with frames per second. Preferably shoot with at least 60 FPS, but a lot of cameras don't offer this recording setting. In situations where you have a lot of movement around the camera, or if you want to do slow motion shots, you want to increase the FPS. Do know that increasing the FPS will need you to increase the amount of light falling on the sensor. Double the FPS, double the light for the same output result. If you've set the FPS, don't change it anymore, but work with the other settings to get your desired output. Shutter speed. Shutter speed or exposure time is the length of time when the digital sensor inside the camera is exposed to light. Shutter speed is measured in seconds, or in most cases, fractions of seconds. The bigger the denominator, the higher your shutter speed will be. This will result in less motion blur, as you can see in this example. The setting of your shutter speed can cause flickering images when it's set to either a similar number or a multiplication of the hertz of your lights. In Europe, for example, the lights run on 50 Hz, and flickering is apparent on shutter speed setting 1/50th of a second. Avoid this by using a different denominator than the amount of Hz. There's also a difference in the type of shutter that your camera is using. This is either a global shutter, where the whole image is captured in one time, or a rolling shutter, where the shutter speed is being closed in phases. A rolling shutter can cause distortion in images with high movement, as you can see. ISO. Use the ISO to increase the sensitivity of your sensor, but with a higher ISO number also comes reduction of your image quality. Your image will look noisy with a high ISO value. Try to find a balance between these settings, and if you're not happy yet, try to change the lighting. The next step is to press record on your camera and check if it starts recording. On most cameras this is indicated by a flashing light or in the software. Press record again to stop. Then power off your camera. It is now wise to quickly check if your camera has recorded properly, because there can be corrupted SD cards, digital artifacts in the images, completely black images, or simply wrong settings after all. In some of these cases you may have to replace one of the SD cards or cameras. I'm not making this up, we've actually experienced all of these issues ourselves at some point. Every camera has its own offloading system. With the GoPro setup it's wise to use a USB hub. Others can be offloaded over Ethernet, SDI or USB-C. If everything is recorded properly, you are finally ready for the shoot. To start filming your scene, press record on your audio recorder and power on your camera. Press record and then check if all cameras are running. If so, mention the take number out loud. If your camera rig does not support Genlock, it's almost impossible to let all individual cameras start recording at the same time. You'll need to synchronize the images in the stitching software. Loudly clap your hands in front of all the lenses of your camera, so you also have the option to sync your images based on sound, as well as sync your mic recordings with your video recordings during post-production. Now hide! I'm serious. Since the camera films on all sides simultaneously, you'll have to either leave the room, hide behind the nearest tree, or prepare to play a part in the scene you're filming. With high-end 360 cameras, it's possible to get a live view in a VR headset. This can be really important for the director, as he or she can instantly see how the take worked out. If you don't have the access to a full 360 live view, you can also mount a GoPro underneath your rig and stream the live feed over Wi-Fi or HDMI. You will only be able to view one side of the scene, but it's better than going blind. The data feed from a GoPro rig is simply too big for live playback. When the take is done, shout "cut". Check in your software or on the camera's display if your camera is still recording properly. Then press record again to stop the recording. Did your camera record the first take? Check in the software or on your display for a 01. Yes? Congratulations! You just shot your first cinematic VR take. Rinse and repeat for the rest of your takes. It might be wise to know during the shoot the takes that you already know are unusable. This will save you hours of time in post-production, since you will not have to stitch those takes. Live streaming. It is possible to live stream 360 video over internet. Some brands offer it as a function inside of their cameras. Others need third-party live stitching software like Vahana in order to stream the full panorama to the desired destination. Live streaming is a completely different ballgame, so we're not going to dive in that in this course. If you want to have more insights on live streaming, start with reading our detailed blog on purplepill.io/blog/livestreaming. The fact that you're working with delicate technology greatly increases the odds of something going wrong, so be prepared to troubleshoot at any time and always bring spare parts. Don't worry though, we've encountered many issues and there's usually a solution. The most common problems are overheating and storage issues, and because of that, the moment when you stop the recording has proven to be one of the most scary moments, especially after a long recording or after charging your camera, which also generates a lot of heat. Try to reset the camera and remove the battery if possible. Make sure you let the camera cool down before attempting another shot. To be sure that your camera stores its recording properly, check the footage in between recordings. Also, bringing spare SD cards or SSDs can help greatly. To minimize the risk of overheating, try to limit the length of your takes to 3 minutes. Also, power off your rig after each take. Unless you have to do several shots in rapid succession, make sure to turn on a fan and turn off the lights in between takes to remove excess heat and cool the camera. If none of this works, the only option is to replace the malfunctioning camera with another one, which is why you should think ahead about a backup plan. Shooting with the lower end camera can be a low-key and cheap solution. To summarize, first, prepare your camera with our 8 handy steps. Set up your camera at eye height and hook up the mic and power supply. Then, start your shoot with a little test run to make sure all cams record properly and with the correct settings. During the actual shoot, always make sure both the audio and all the cameras are recording. Sync on audio by clapping loudly before calling the scene. Once the scene is done, shout "cut" and check if all cameras recorded properly. Note unusable takes to save you a lot of spotting and stitching time during post-production. Be prepared to troubleshoot and always bring spare parts. Overheating is one of the biggest problems you will face. We covered several ways to minimize the chance of overheating. For example, by limiting the length of your takes and by powering off your rig after each take. To fix an overheated camera, either reset or replace it. Well done! You just finished your first VR shoot. In the next lesson, we cover how to manage the mountain of data that is coming from your 360 camera rig. Also, if you haven't done so already, please leave us an honest review on Udemy, because I'm very curious to hear what you think about this course so far. See ya!